We're now
Thank you
going to
so
move on
much.
to our Dell session. Jeff,
Yes, sir.
have you heard of Dell?
I have a crazy, so I just came from being on the road in Vegas. I was using their 7760. I forget the cores in the Xeon. I have 128 gigs in the machine with a 3080 card and 4 terabytes of storage. It is just a joy to use. It's got a pair of Thunderbolt 4 ports on there. I got a lot of Thunderbolt hardware, and that's not even getting into their monitors, which are just wonderful. That's I've switched entirely over to Dell screens, particularly they've got a 42-inch curved monitor that's 5K. That's just all the UI space. The 2 or 3 things that I'll mention about some of the Dell workstations that people miss. One is all the workstations happen to come with a level of pro support. And while I like my other hardware, Warren, can I tell you just how nice it is to have a 24-hour response time of somebody who will come out on site and fix hardware that's got a problem? Can I just tell you about—
Does that exist?
It does exist. I actually had a problem about 2 years ago with a different piece of kit. Somebody came out and fixed it in my driveway during the height of COVID because it was warm enough. And it's not that I don't like my other hardware, but calling up a store and then having it carted to the store and then waiting 4 days for them to come back to me and tell me what's wrong, that's just bad costs. They have some really nice software to make the general Windows experience a little bit smarter. There's a thing called the Dell Precision Optimizer. It sits back and looks at your usage and tweaks the system to just work a little bit better for you. Across the board right now, Dell has been my favorite hardware provider.
Mate, are you doing the 5 minutes for Dell? Can Matt not make it? That was brilliant.
I don't know if Matt can make it, but if he can't
well,
make
you've just done it.
Yeah. I mean, it's they're on for my Windows system, and that's what's really outperforming everything else I own right now. It's a hell of a
fantastic.
It's a hell of a system.
Mr. Tobenken, how are you, buddy? Long time no see.
Yes, I'm very good. And I'm going to apologize up front if my light gets darker and darker through this. I'm at the Bellagio, and I don't mean Vegas Bellagio. I mean Bellagio, Italy, in a small hotel with lit by a candle, basically.
Nice.
So
that's rather cinematic there, Steve.
It's very cinematic. Yes.
I was going to say, how many lux? How many lux?
I don't know. It's a 40-watt candelabra bulb running at 220.
Are you going to turn into like Colonel Kurtz by the end of this thing?
It's going to be strange. It's going to be great. Yes, thrilled to be here. And
well, thanks for joining. So yeah, like I said earlier, Kevin and I thought it would be really good to give a little nod to ACES and what you guys have been doing, because it's been about 10 years, isn't it?
I think officially it's been 7 since we released version 1.0. And that's not, new tech. New tech is coming. So apropos of the name of the session.
Excellent, good. And the ACESNext, if you could just give us an overview for obviously those that have not heard of this, and what is this initiative about?
Okay, so ACES is basically a community-driven initiative. So the Academy, Motion Picture Academy, has underwritten it, but it's not a product of the Motion Picture Academy. It's a product of the community. So colorists, and then some probably on this call who are involved, DPs, color scientists, studios, are the ones that are working in committees and making ACES happen and making all the versions of ACES happen. And so ACESNext is really the drive to get ACES 2.0 out, and then future versions of support that will bring ACES to full fruition of what people have asked for. We released ACES 1.0. It's been used on like hundreds, probably thousands of shows, certainly if you include episodes. And people have said, well, we'd like it to do this, or we don't like that, or what if we could do this other thing? And that's ACESNext. It's how do we get to, something that's fully a joy to use and has all the features people want, and is a unifying force in the workflow for color management.
And the roadmap into 2.0, how's that shaping up?
It's good. So basically, all of this is public information. It's all on ACESCentral.com. There is a roadmap that's actually a Gantt chart. We're a little off that roadmap, to be honest, but we do hope that ACES 2.0 will launch by the end of the year, and also that it will have support from the manufacturers through whom you use it. So ACES isn't software that you apply to a workflow. It's actually built into color correctors, cameras, displays, on-set, color and monitoring. And I could name a bunch of the products, but there's at least 32 companies, 5 or 6 camera companies, 6 color correctors, compositors that have pledged to build ACES up to standards. And then there's dozens and dozens of other companies. Maxon, we don't know. I mean, I know who they are, use their product, but we didn't know they were supporting ACES. So that's great. There's lots of companies, and that using those products is how you use ACES. So that's what we're doing, and all those companies are working together to try to help us get ACES out the door by the end of the year with a little luck.
Excellent. Welcome, Alex.
How you doing, Warren?
Good, buddy. Just a little intro on yourself, please.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Alex Forsythe. I work at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, where my title there is Director of Imaging Technology. I work for a group called the Science and Technology Council. It's a group of members who are particularly interested in science and technology as it relates to the motion picture business. One of the projects that we've been working on for quite a while is the Academy Color Encoding System, or ACES. On that project, I serve as sort of the technical lead on that project. Work with Steve, who has been helping us for a number of years on adoption and trying to get this out into products in the industry. And yeah, so I work, I do everything from on that project from helping the working groups get going and build the product, serve to sort of direct the major technical direction of the project, and help productions actually try to use it.
Oh, excellent. Thanks for joining, man.
Yeah, sure.
Cullen, you're pretty heavy ACES user. Is there a percentage on what sort of jobs? How do you work out whether you are in ACES or you're not? You're on mute. I can't hear me.
There we go.
Jeff, you're on mute too.
Yeah.
Couldn't find the button. There we go. You can hear me now, right?
Yep.
We
Yeah,
can.
great.
We should keep a score. We should keep a score at how many times we have somebody on mute before this mixer is over.
Please don't. I will lose that game badly.
I think it's just a sum total as a giveaway, because I think I've done it twice now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a prize.
Yeah. So hopefully I use ACES more skillfully than I use Zoom. To answer Warren's question, I do use ACES quite a bit. And I think beyond whether or not I choose to use it on a particular project, I think it would be hard to overstate the impact that ACES has had on bringing our entire industry around to this imperative that we need to be working color managed and scene referred when we're mastering motion images. It's simply the only way to get the best out of what was acquired on set on the day. So I'm a huge fan of it. And those of you who know me or who have hung out with me in other venues before know my concept that I talk about of my color science crushes. Alex, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit and say that you're on my list of color science crushes. So glad to be talking about this with you here today. But yes, big fan of ACES, not only as a tool, but in terms of like the overall shift that it has affected in our industry and our understanding of how to really properly master motion images.
I was just going to ask Kevin something. He's disappeared. Maybe he's had to go to the bathroom.
The
Jeff,
idea, Cullen. I love the idea of a
yeah.
color crush like that. ACES, it's changed the way I work and think, is the only way I can say it, because I know I'm working in a veritable safety, regardless of where my output is. How'd I do, guys? Is that like it on the money?
Yeah,
Pretty good.
good on the money.
That's, I mean,
I think-
it's once it made sense, and I felt nervous in the, those first, but it's now almost a de facto. It's just got to be color managed, and it's got to be color managed at the beginning, or it's nosebleeds and headaches.
Right.
Well, you picked up there with that nervous, and I get this from quite a lot of people have heard it, and they go, well, should I be trying this? And I think people are very sort of worried about jumping in, or they're going to break their project, or they've got their clients, and so I think it's trying to get a safety net for people. And
it's not a trust issue.
Is one of those things. Well,
it's not a trust issue. It's just, do I have the switches in the right spot?
Yeah.
And when something from like a VFX house comes in and their switches aren't, how do I either help them get into the right spot, or how do I say to that material, you get left alone and I'll come back and I'll make sure you're all right? I think that's the parallel. And the hardest thing is just getting really clear, because every workflow is a little different. And that's where people, have nervous. What is it? Test your workflow or forever pay the price. And it's just a little hard to be sure about in some of those pieces when it's the first time you've done it.
My question, and to Steve and Alex probably, is what have you guys got to try and handheld people and encourage them to jump in and maybe adopt it as a workflow? What resources do you have?
So we've got a couple. I'll just lay out a few. So there are some quick start guides on ACES Central that sort of explain, what a colorist or what a DP would be interested in ACES, and we've got there are sort of sprinkled throughout ACES some sample workflows that people have used in shows. For example, we did a webinar with Sex Education, the British show, and they laid it out. They put in their workflow. And so there's lots of things like that. There's a hugely robust community, with mentors who have agreed to help people. So things, if you say, my first time in ACES, I'm having this trouble, someone will answer you within, minutes, if not hours. And they're just, they like ACES and they like helping people. They like the industry to work well. And it's just an unbelievable resource that has grown up through the community. So those are some of the things. And just to add one more thing to Jeff's comment, you just have to have a conversation. If it's a complex workflow on any level, you have to have a conversation, that leads to testing most likely. But, how are we doing the VFX? How are we doing the color? How are we doing the onset monitoring, et cetera? And the reality is with ACES, there's about half a dozen questions. I'm using this ID, this camera. Okay, I know what the input transform is. I'm using this color corrector. Okay, I know what the switches are. And it actually simplifies, we've been told, and we believe, that it simplifies this conversation that you would have with any workflow, because ACES is a known thing. And it's, prescribed and then built into these products up to standards, by and large.
Yeah, absolutely. It's worth saying that ACES is not a replacement for professionals and professional tools. This doesn't sort of just make all your problems go away. There's communication is still imperative. It's hard work to make motion pictures. It's hard work to make television shows, episodic television shows. It's hard work to make video games. What this does is it normalizes the communication so that you're not speaking past each other, so that you're using a common set of tools and a common vocabulary to solve the problem, rather than starting from ground zero, where everybody's saying maybe the same thing, but in a different way.
So yeah, Steve, I saw your reference to Sex Education. Great show, good look, and great workflow. We were trying to get a session on that, and we do plan to do a session on that show. We're probably going to do a Color Space Cadets on that whole show coming up. Cullen, what would you like to see in 2.0? Have you got anything on your wish list?
Well, I've got a long wish list. I'm curious off the bat, and forgive me, I know nothing about 2.0. I don't know what's planned or not. But I'm curious, Alex, is the working space going to remain the same in terms of spec, or is that going to change?
So the working spaces that we have a variety of working spaces that we provide for different use cases, and those will likely stay the same in ACES 2.0, but there's no necessity to use those if you feel that there's a working space that works better for a particular, again, use case that you have. And what ACES does, this goes back to the communication portion of this, what ACES does is it allows you to, in an intelligent way, get into and out of the space that you're using for interchange. So if you're using ACES 2065-1 for interchange and you want to go to, I don't know, I'll make something up, array wide gamut log or gamut 2.2, that totally ridiculous thing. You can do that, but you know how to do that because we've defined this space very carefully and communicated what it is very clearly. You then can transfer out of it and back into it very in a controlled manner. But again, the ACES doesn't solve all your problems. If the coffee at craft services was horrible before, it's still going to be horrible if you're using ACES. But what it does is it allows you to move in and out of these color spaces in a controlled manner.
Makes great sense. And you guys have done some great work even in the 1.3 release with the gamut compression algorithm and for handling large input gamuts. I think that's a quite elegant solution.
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually a major piece of work. And I mean, there were a lot of people involved in that. I mean, I can name names, but that was a very, very elegant solution to a problem. And for those of you who don't understand this, this addresses sort of the blue issue, where you could get sort of kind of clipping blues. That was typically where it most often happened. It could actually happen in any color. And it actually was not a problem that's specific to ACES either. This is anytime you're dealing with multiple color system or color spaces, and you're sort of mixing and matching content from multiple color spaces, regardless of what system you're using, you can get this exact same problem. But it was, ACES is a place where people sort of by its nature take multiple cameras and content from different locations and bring them together. So it was just something that was a little bit more obviously happening in ACES than some other systems, but a very, very elegant solution that solves the problem.
Yes.
I'm just glad somebody smarter than I am is working on like how these things should talk together so it doesn't damage the imagery. It makes me look good at the end because I put all the pieces together and I have confidence it's going to work.
Yeah.
So I mean, like Colin talks about you guys being a crush. Well, I didn't have color crushes before this, Colin, but maybe now I do.
You got to get your list going, buddy.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, this is what we try and do in these colorist mixes. Who knows? What could be 5 years down the road with you guys. Questions? Anyone's got any questions? Please post them in the chat. Sorry, Cullen, I cut you off there.
Oh, not at all. I was going to make more bad dad jokes, which I feel are coming to me in greater volume than ever now that I'm an actual dad.
I will say the one thing, and Steve or Alex, if you could, if you have them handy, if not, somebody will find them. It'd be great to put some of the educational resource pieces into our chat, just to make it easy for people watching to go and do a click away and become smarter people.
Sure. try to do that. One thing I think it's worth mentioning is, and there is a list on ACES Central, that link I happen to have, on some of the productions that have been done. And they're really all over the place. They're huge tentpole movies. They're small indie films from Vietnam. They're like Dave Chappelle, Sticks and Stones. That's not a cinematic thing. That's a comedy show. And it's being used by sophisticated teams and, you know, single operators, you know, who are deciding to color using that, you know, or color and finish even, you know, entirely using that. So, you know, it's very versatile that way, and heavy use obviously by Marvel and people that have, you know, 30 VFX companies working on a job. They need a way to you know, manage that, and ACES is the way they use it.
Totally. I was chatting with Kevin about this a little while ago. When we teach a 101 class, should we be starting with color manage right up the top? Now, we discussed this, and I think there's two schools. I think you've got to know the tools that we've all grown up with, your lift gamma gains and what they all do. But then there's a school of thought, well, a lot of people, they just would like color management or ACES to jump in. Jeff, you got a feeling on this? Because
I do. I did a bunch of teaching at NAB, and it was really wild because I sat back and did the LUT discussion. I did, you know, some of the real foundational pieces. And then we came back after and said, remember all that work we did? Switch, tag the footage, switch. Oh, everything looks good as a starting point. And it kind of rocked them back on their heels, because I said, all right, now that you know the technique, start with the technique at this spot rather than at the truly raw spot. And they didn't have any inkling that Resolve had these abilities, because I was teaching a Resolve class. They didn't have any inkling of it. I think the base comfort of a tool is separate from color management, but color management's a day 2 item, you know, because of its value, just in whether or not somebody's working in a professional pipeline.
Yeah, I've got a question. Cullen, your thoughts on ACES, the Blackmagic, Resolve, Color, whatever they called it this week, and like Filmlight have got their own internal color management, haven't they? What are the benefits of those, and you seeing much of interaction?
That's a great question, and I think is certainly one of the big ones when it comes to like, which color management framework should I use? I'll answer by saying that I think fundamentally, whichever one you choose boils down to how you're wanting to configure the relationship between what your display transform does and what your creative transform upstream of that does, and what you want each of those things to do. I think Alex and I kind of got started talking about this very briefly last year during the SMPTE annual technical conference about like, what's the relationship between those things and what should that relationship be? I actually don't think any one of us has the definitive answer. And in fact, that's one of the great things about the ACES system, that it's open and that there's open dialogue being had about that any of us can weigh in on. I think that's one of the key questions of color management. What should the relationship between technical transform and creative transform be in a proper color management framework? That question is what answers for me, like, oh, do I want to use Resolve color management or ACES or a base light flavor of color management? It kind of depends on my creative needs and on what I'm looking for out of the display transform versus out of my creative transform. But I think that's a key question to sort of evaluate and answer as a group as color management continues to mature, because it's very, very young. 7 years is not a long time on the scale of a century plus of mastering motion images. So we all should have a voice and a role to play in the way that plays out.
Yeah, I think that there's
I
think there's a point here to be made about standards too. You know, we have to kind of a bunch of de facto standards in the film world, right? We knew what to do with film. We knew how to shoot it. We knew how to print it. We knew how to manipulate it as we made the print. And when film kind of went away and we moved into a digital world, it was there were no standards. All the standards kind of went away, and so trying to move back to a standards-based approach it just benefits everybody, because everybody knows what. Again, the communication piece here. We're not making everything up as we go along, and there. In the digital world, there was at least one good standard. Rec 709 is very, very good, but it's for a slightly different use case too. It was what existed when, in the early days of digital cinema, but it was really designed to shoot live television, pass a signal down a wire that's ready to go to a monitor and put it on a monitor directly. So it was not a scene referred based workflow. And so what we've tried to do with ACES is in a lot of ways kind of bring back some of the concepts associated with film, but without the film. I'm not talking about look, I'm not talking about like trying to, make things look like they were shot on film, but conceptually sort of the blocks. This is where I capture, and this is how much information is there. This is where I manipulate, and this is how I reproduce. Having that sort of conceptual diagram that we had kind of in film for what happens at what stage was lost, but we've sort of tried to base ACES on a lot of those conceptual blocks.
One of the biggest
I
accomplishments.
just want to go back to, yeah.
I was going to
Mr.
say,
Shaw.
can I, sorry, I had a power cut. So my untimely demise.
You
For
need
me,
to put money in.
yeah, really, that was it. In my job at Mission, where we're going from on-set DITs, dailies, lab work through editorial, doing VFX pulls, and then getting it into the color room, we're pushing ACES all the time because of it being open source and being it multi-platform. And that way visual effects can match the lab dailies that's going through. Colorist can contribute an LMT and know that they can work on exactly what they started. Cinematographer knows that his creative intent is being passed on through the line all the way down to the colorist. So in addition to, and the other thing I wanted to say is I do teach it day one of the 101 class, because I just feel that it's, it's just the right way to work. If we're not working scenery for it nowadays, it's just going to be problematic, especially if you're dealing with some of the bigger streaming companies, the Netflix and the Amazons and so on. I mean, that's what they want. So there's no other way for me.
Yeah, just to finish off, back to what Steve, you mentioned Marvel. Now, I've heard of them. Now, the number of VFX vendors on a Marvel movie is quite a few, I would imagine. You see it on the credits, don't you?
Yeah.
Now, they all, that obviously the hard thing is getting them all on board,
Right.
all working in ACES. Is that a challenge for these guys, or these bigger houses all across this now? It's easy for them.
Well, I think Marvel has been working on this for a number of years, obviously, because they've been doing ACES for a number of years. And they have some pipeline people whose job it is to actually go out and do that. But I mean, all of the large and most of the medium-sized houses around the world do in fact know what ACES is and probably have worked in ACES. Some of them, I can't name names, actually use ACES as their interchange format internally. So anything that comes into the facility gets into ACES, it's all in ACES because it's all sort of harmonized then. And if it goes out as something other than ACES, because that's what the spec says, that's fine. But there has been, I think, a little bit of a lag in some of the smaller VFX houses around the world. And some companies like Netflix and others who do a lot of production, have asked us to try to reach out and amp that up. And we're working on that. And one really, really key thing that I think is worth mentioning is the idea of OCIO is now really a tool that provides an entry point into ACES for so many people in VFX. I mean, there's 20 or 30 companies that use OCIO as their entry point into color management and ACES. And so that's been Alex, maybe you have something to say about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, huge shout out to OCIO version 2 in particular. Version 1 used LUTs for everything, and you could run into some issues around the corners. I mean, OCIO 1, great, but OCIO 2 takes that to a whole nother level, particularly with ACES. With ACES, the actual transforms, the actual math are built right into OCIO 2. So it will match sort of our reference code bit for bit. You don't run into sort of corner cases where you see issues because a LUT in OCIO is causing a problem. So highly recommend OCIO 2.0. Great work by those guys.
Fantastic, fellas. So we're going to have to wind this up because Dell, who have sponsored this, but I really want to say thank you to Alex and Steve and Cullen for jumping in on this. It's great. Let's keep the conversation going, and we look forward to 2.0. And thanks for joining.
Thank you. We're actually working with CSI, CS Hollywood, to try to do some more with colorists, because they're such a key constituency for color and for using ACES. So hopefully you'll find more.
Fantastic.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Allard, welcome.
Hey, Warren, how's it going?
Good, buddy. Thanks for jumping. Thanks for supporting us again and getting on board with a mixer. I'm sure it's been a busy week for you, like a lot of people on here.
Yeah, still in recovery a little bit from our week in Vegas for NAB, but happy to be joining, and we are sponsoring. So just a brief message from your sponsors. Won't spend much time at all. And actually, we're signed on for the year with iColorist. So thank you.
Excellent. No, it's good to be. Thanks for that support.
Well, we're happy to be there. I think I'm a director of alliances and solutions for Dell Technologies, and we're really happy to serve this group and the workflows that you serve. I don't know if you made it by Dell for the NAB, if you were there, but definitely welcome you to any of our forward-looking shows. I know we're going to be at SIGGRAPH in August, so if you're there, please stop by.
Fantastic.
Be there.
Yeah, no, I didn't make it, but yeah, no, go for it. Tell us what you got.
Okay, just a brief message. I wanted to share one piece of news from an announcement we made at NAB, and this was actually a little early. We decided to pull the trigger a little early, and it was done mid-show on Tuesday morning. And that's an announcement of some new mobile workstations that I think are quite relevant to what the team here does. We've been in the process of revising our entire product line. We just have done now all of our mobiles and our 3000 series towers. But on Tuesday, we announced our 7000 series mobiles. These are our desktop replacement mobile workstations. One of the themes here is moving to the Intel 12th generation processors, which are a huge change in infrastructure with an infrastructure that has both performance cores and efficiency cores. And you can kind of see that in that first bullet there around 8P plus 8E. That's 8 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores. That actually gives you a total of the 8 performance cores burst into twice as many logical processors. So you've got 16 plus 8 logical processing cores, so a great deal of processing capability. And then, of course, we're supporting the latest NVIDIA RTX card. This is the A5500 mobile GPU with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, I've had customers use the predecessor of this, which is considerably less powerful, on set for look and color, initial color grade of shots for raw material straight off the drive, straight off the storage from the camera. So we expect this machine's gonna be great. Rather than having to roll a card in, this is a machine you can actually roll in on its own. It's all Gen 4 graphics, PCIe Gen 4 graphics, and Gen 4 storage, which means you've got double the bandwidth of the previous Gen 3 architecture, which is also why we're able to run such high resolution through this machine. I'll just mention we've innovated a new memory module. This is a single memory module that Dell has designed and is going to contribute back as an open standard. The benefit of this particular module is it does run at higher speeds, it's thinner, and it basically fills all the memory channels that the processor is accessing, give you maximum memory performance. So again, this machine's built for super high performance, and comes through in that way. You'll see a few other things if you're familiar with the previous model in that the trackpad's larger. We've got some additional sensors. Again, UHD monitor with 500 nits of brightness and 100% P3 coverage on the 4K display. So it's actually quite good display on this particular model. So this is a model we've had for a while, just upgraded. The other announcement we made was on a model that there's a new form factor in 16 inches, so very similar to the previous specifications, but in 16-inch form factor. So again, this will give you the same 24 logical processing cores, the A5500. I didn't note the number of M2 slots. Some of our customers on these machines, there is hardware RAID support, so they can actually RAID across those M2 slots. Each slot can handle up to a 4 terabyte drive. So on this model, you can get a total of 12 terabytes RAIDed. On the other model, you can get up to 16 terabytes RAIDed. So again, a couple of new models, thought you might like to know about them. Great as a desktop replacement or when you're trying to do your work on the road. And with that, that's all I wanted to share for today. I really appreciate the opportunity to drop in and give a brief message. I want to thank...
I don't want to let you off stage yet.
Jeff.
Matt.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
It's going great. I have to really thank you for the suggestion around, I think it's called ProCare.
Pro Support, yeah. Dell's Pro Support, yeah.
I think that this is just one of those things that is professionally made it just easier in a lot of the shops I'm at and a lot of the places I work, because as I was saying a little bit earlier, in the pre-show, the idea that if something goes wrong, I'm not taking somebody and having them have a real down day, that it's a phone call. And then based on an evaluative process, somebody's coming out like the next day. I reached out to Matt because I ended up needing something fixed right at the beginning of COVID when we were all just super unsure, and somebody fixed it out in my driveway. I don't even know how to express how wonderful that is.
Yeah, I think the idea of having to, go into a store and wait in line for service is something that kind of runs counter to most of our commercial customers who are trying to make a living. So the idea that you can call someone, get quickly diagnosed, and get somebody to your place, we definitely recommend our Pro Support. There's several levels with escalating levels of support, and those 7000 series mobiles do come with a standard of a 3-year warranty. So we back these up because we believe in them and we know that they're going to be bulletproof in your workflows. Just want to thank you again for the opportunity to present here, and want to thank on behalf of Dell and NVIDIA letting us give you a moment of presentation. Thanks so much.